Hi there, this is Panicle for Thomann synthesizers. In the last videos I showed you how to get started with modular synthesizers, how to expand your setup with more advanced modules, and how to integrate it into your studio setup. In this video I would like to show you an alternative to this approach. Instead of going full in and buying yourself a complete modular system, you could also get yourself a semi-modular synthesizer, which is also a very popular approach among beginners. So let's get started. So what exactly is a semi-modular synthesizer? A semi-modular synthesizer is more or less a combination of a conventional hardware synthesizer and a full-blown modular system. You can usually play it without needing a dedicated case or using a single patch cable, as all important connections are already pre-wired. Additionally, they offer various patch points throughout the interface or at a dedicated patch bay, which allows the user to change the internal signal flow at certain points and experiment with it. This brings great flexibility without being forced to patch your instrument right away. Let's start with the Mother-32 synthesizer from MOOG, which seems to be one of the more popular choices when it comes to semi-modular synthesizers for beginners. It's a monophonic analog synthesizer with the usual wonderful MOOG sound that you can play right away without the need to patch a single cable. You even have a keyboard with which you can play the synthesizer directly or program sequences into it. And you also have access to all functionalities of the synthesizer via these knobs and switches. You can adjust the frequency of your oscillator over here and decide what waveform it should have. You can blend the signal with the internal noise generator. And you can use the gorgeous sounding filter before the signal is being sent to the VCA. You also have an envelope generator with adjustable attack, decay and sustain parameters. Glide. And an LFO to modulate various parameters within the Mother-32. On the right side of the synthesizer you will find a dedicated patch bay, with which you can experiment further or connect it to other devices with corresponding connections. Let me show you some patch examples. You could, for example, patch the LFO triangle out into the external audio input over here. It overrides the normalization of the white noise to the clockwise position of this mixer. This way you can have two notes playing at the same time, even though the LFO stays at the same pitch. Then you could patch the saw oscillator output into the filter cutoff to get some more interesting timbres out of the sound. And you could of course patch the main sound into another module if you already own one. Let's send it to the Starlab module from Strymon to add some cinematic reverb to it. There are of course many more possibilities here, and it's very rewarding to explore them. Let's have a look at the Zero Coast from Make Noise now, which is also a great choice when starting out. It looks a bit more intimidating at first, but it definitely is a great way to learn the basics of modular synthesis. As you can see, this semi-modular synthesizer has no built-in keyboard, so if you would like to use one, you would have to connect it first via this MIDI-in jack. The signal path travels from the left to the right side of the instrument as shown by the golden arrows, starting here with the control section. This is where you can find the MIDI input, the main clock, a random voltage, as well as a CV processing circuit. Next in line is the oscillator with tune and fine-tune controls, which is then being sent to the timbre section, consisting of the overtone and multiply circuits to alter the harmonic character of the sound. Next to it you can find the slope section, which is pre-wired to the multiply section. You don't hear it right away because it needs a trigger signal to start working. One way to hear it is to set the slope circuit to cycle or to send a trigger signal into the according jack. With the balance circuit over here, you can blend between the oscillator triangle waveform, called fundamental, and the harmonic overtones that are being generated by the overtone and multiply circuits. From there, the golden arrow points down to the dynamic section. It is being controlled by the contour circuit, which is basically an envelope generator with which you can shape the amplitude of the audio signal. And here is the line out jack, where I connected the Zero Coast to my external mixer. Now let me show you some patch examples. If you want to hear the Zero Coast but don't have an external controller at hand, you can patch the clock out signal into the gate input jack and set the tempo with the tab button up here. Or, if you would like to hear a constant sound, you could also patch the output from this section into the dynamic CV input. To alter the pitch of the signal, you could use the random voltage out and patch it into the 1 volt per octave in, which is of course very random. Or you could use the slope output to get some sweeping or laser or robotic sounds, for example. Let's modulate the length of the decay parameter so the notes ring out longer and shorter now. We can use the random voltage for this purpose, or we could also use the slope circuit to have more control over the modulation. You can use the slope generator as an oscillator too if you want. You will have to patch it into the balance input and hence override the triangle oscillator and activate the cycle mode. Then you will have to adjust the parameters so it cycles fast enough to be in the audible frequency spectrum. This way it has a constant pitch. If you wanted to change with the pitch that is coming in via MIDI, you could use this little trick here, by patching the square output into the trigger input of the slope section and setting the knobs like this. Despite being quite small, it has a lot to offer, and I'm sure you could learn a lot with this one about the complexities of modular synthesizers. And it has a very unique sound to it, which is also a plus. Let's move on to our last example, the iconic MS-20, but in the mini version. It's a monophonic analog synthesizer with 2 oscillators over here. You can choose between different waveforms, set the scale of each oscillator separately and detune the second oscillator if you want. Here's the VCO mixer with which you can set the levels of both oscillators, and next to it you'll find a high pass, a low pass, and the VCA section. Down here you have an LFO and 2 envelope generators to modulate the amplitude, the frequency of the oscillators, and the filter cutoffs to your liking. To the right of the synthesizer you will find a cute patch bay with lots of infos on how the signal flows and where you can alter it. Down here you even have an external signal processor, which you can incorporate into your sound too. So let me show you some patch examples now. The first one I'd like to show you is how you could connect the modulation wheel. Without any patching, it doesn't do anything. You'll need to patch a cable into this jack over here and then send it to anything you like. Let's take the frequency cutoff for example. In order for it to work, you will also need to turn up this knob, which determines the amount of modulation applied to the cutoff. Or you can patch it into the frequency jack in and turn up the corresponding knob again to make it work. Next, I'd like to show you how we could use the modulation wheel to add white noise to our main sound. First, you need to patch the white noise into the VCA in and the VCA out into our external signal input over here. When you play the keyboard now, you have no possibility to adjust the volume of the noise generator. What we can do now is patch the mod wheel output into the control input of the VCA unit. Now we only hear the white noise when we pull up the mod wheel. We could also use the external signal processor to integrate the white noise into our main sound. Here we could also filter it and adjust the volume with the signal level knob. For this we need to patch the white noise output into the signal in jack of the external signal processor and then take an extra cable to patch the output back into the VCA input. This way we can adjust the sound a bit before it is being added to the main sound. Another favorite of mine is to feed the main signal back into the synthesizer through the modulation bus to get a more interesting and unstable sound. You will have to patch the main signal out into the signal in from our external signal processor and then patch the audio out into the total input over here and then adjust the amount with the according knobs. It makes for some interesting new harmonic content, which you can adjust with the filter and modulation parameters. The MS-20 is a classic for a reason. The sound is remarkable and the beautiful patch bay is great to learn more about synthesis in general. There are of course many more semi-modular synthesizers that you could check out. It really depends on your taste and what fits your workflow best. Thanks so much for watching, I hope you liked the video. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below. Bye!